What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Power of Fitness podcast. Actually, see, I messed that up. So if you guys are listening, then check out the Power of Fitness podcast because it's another podcast we do. But today I got an episode of the My Side of the Block podcast. Can't believe I just messed that one up there. But hey, we're going to keep rolling because this means I got to do an episode of the Power of Fitness. But My Side of the Block, we got a quick rundown here. I want to tell you guys to tune into us. We got a lot of stuff coming up. We've had a lot of stuff the last couple of weeks that we've been throwing out there. So shout out to my guy Paul for putting out content, and shout out to everybody that has joined the debates, and shout out to everybody that has shared us. And I want to let you guys know that we are doing a giveaway right now. We're doing a shirt giveaway and also a surprise prize giveaway for the month of February. So if you guys are listening to the My Side of the Block podcast on audio, please give us a review and send us that review in. Screenshot it, send it to us either on our email at bobbyknockout@gmail.com or send it to our Instagram pages, which is on all the feeds, or just send it to us right on Facebook. If you guys are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our page, share our link, and send that to us. We greatly appreciate that. It's going to help us get our great sports talk out there, and it's going to help us get out, all of you that come onto the show. It's going to help us out, so please go ahead and do that. Now, today I'm going to come with you guys with a quick hit episode, and I'm going to talk to you guys about my favorite sport. And I don't really think it's considered a sport, but we're going to call it a sport. We're going to talk about MMA. We got a UFC fight coming up on Saturday, and it's UFC Fight Night 200. I would love to give you guys a breakdown of the entire card, but unfortunately, I didn't do my research on the entire card. I don't really know anybody else that's really relevant to talk about on the rest of the card. So we're only going to talk about one fight on the card. And if you guys are UFC fans, MMA fans, sports fans in general, this is going to be a fight that you guys are all going to want to tune into. We got a brutal matchup right here. We got between Jack Hermansson, the Joker, and Sean Strickland. Coming into this fight, I was a fan of Sean Strickland because I just like the way he fights. He's a guy that just wants to throw hands. You know how Conor McGregor always says, anyone, anywhere? This guy really fights by that. And when he fights by that, he stands up, he throws, he wants a knockout. He literally either wants to get knocked out, which he doesn't, or he knocks you out. He just wants to beat people's asses. And that's what he does. We got another guy on the other side, Jack Hermansson, who wants to do the same thing. He's a guy that throws hands, throws rockets. He's from, Sweden. This guy is a beast as well. He was an up-and-comer fighter. He's still in the mix for the middleweight division, but we got a brawl here. We got Jack Hermansson. He's sitting at 22-6 in MMA. He's 9-4 in the UFC. We got Sean Strickland. He's 24-3 in MMA. He's 11-3 in UFC. Both guys come in at 6'1". We got tall guys fighting. Both weighed in at 185. Hermansson got the reach advantage at 77.5 to Strickland has 76. But let's be honest. These are two guys that the reach advantage isn't going to come into effect. Doesn't matter. They're going to be in close quarters. They're going to be throwing. So I want to give you guys a little breakdown of this fight right here. We got Jack Hermansson. In his last 4 fights, he's 2-2. Doesn't say much. 2-2. Oh, why is this guy so hyped up? The reason is because the 2 people that he lost to, one was the last challenger of the title, and the other one is possibly next. The 2 people he beat were also either former champions or former contenders. Last fight in May, he won a decision against Edmund Shahbazyan. Phenomenal performance he put on. He dominated him at every level. Before that, he lost a decision fight to Matt Vettori, which we know Matt Vettori is a beast. He throws bombs. Didn't knock this guy out. It was a good fight. Before that, he actually got a submission of the year in 2020 where he submitted Kelvin Gastelum. And if you guys remember that, if you don't remember it, go back and look up the submission of Hermansson on Gastelum. It was the 2020 submission of the year in MMA. Brutal submission. The guy is lethal on the ground, but he likes to stand up. But if he takes you to the ground, watch out. And before that, he got knocked out by Connier, who also fights on the next fight card, who's a contender as well. Now, Strickland brings me to Strickland. something you guys need to know about Strickland is this. Not only is he 11-3 in the UFC, which is phenomenal, but his only losses came at welterweight. This man in the UFC is 6-0 at middleweight. In his last 19 fights at middleweight, he's 19-0. This guy has never lost a fight at middleweight. And that's saying a lot. This is a guy that we like to talk about that he switched up his careers. He tried to cut weight to make, a splash where he was stronger than the guys at welterweight. Just didn't work for him. He's the type of guy that comes in, fights at his natural weight, throws bombs. 19-0 at middleweight, guys. 6-0 in the UFC. And let me put it this way. He also lost a fight at welterweight, a decision to Kamaru Usman. I'm sorry, anybody that goes a decision with Kamaru Usman, you're a pretty damn good fighter. So let's break it down. We got Hermansson. Guy has a total 22 wins, coming by 11 by knockout, 6 by submission, 5 by decision. Of his losses, he has 6 losses in MMA. He got knocked out twice, he got submitted twice, and he got lost by points twice. So he's a guy that's very versatile. As you see, he can do it by the hands, he can do it on the ground, and he can also maul you out and win you by points. A guy on the other side, we got Strickland. He has 10 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, 10 wins by decision. He's only been knocked out once, and he's only lost by points twice. He's never been submitted. So this is a guy that likes to literally, like I said, throw hands. But he's also a guy that he's hard to knock out. This guy has been hit by left and right, everything you can imagine. Kitchen sink was thrown at this guy, and he doesn't go down. So the Hermansson knockouts that he has, 11 of them, I'm curious to see if he tries to brawl with my man Strickland or tries to take him to the ground. But if he tries to take him to the ground, I want to make sure you guys know that Strickland is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, where Hermansson doesn't have a belt in jiu-jitsu at all. Even though Hermansson has the submissions, he's a better ground guy in his career. Strickland's like a Gaethje guy where he doesn't go to the ground because he likes to throw, but he's a guy that if you take him to the ground, he can do some work on the ground. Just chooses not to. I also want to point out this, guys. Listen to this stat. Of the 11 knockouts from Hermansson, 11 of those knockouts, so 11 out of 11, were done by punches. All 11 of Hermansson's knockouts were done head-to-head, face-to-face, thrown by his hands. Not on the ground knockouts. They were standing up knockouts. And 10 of the 10 knockouts from Strickland were done the same exact way. On top of that, Hermansson has 10 first-round finishes, and Strickland has 9. So they got 19 combined first-round finishes and 21 combined punch knockouts between the two. So this fight should not be slept on. This is going to be a fireworks show. They're going to come out the gate throwing right away. It's not going to be one of them fights where you see these guys kind of feel each other out. No, because they are pretty much identical fighters. They already know. They know what they're going to do. So it's like, who's going to get knocked out? Who's going to be able to absorb the knockout? If you remember Strickland's last fight, he was literally piecing the bull up so much, Christoph Jocko, that he was telling the guy, like, why won't you go down? Why won't you get knocked out? I think that's going to be a case in this fight as well. I do want to mention this, that Strickland is a guy, he has a great training camp. He fights at Couture Extreme, which is with Francis Ngannou, and Ryan Bader, amongst others. Hermansson doesn't train with anybody famous. I'm not saying that really might have anything to do with the fight, but we've seen the type of level of fighters that have produced out of Couture lately, and I'm just saying it's something to take note of. They've been phenomenal. They all come out, they get well prepared for the fights. They're like football players. They get the game plan, A+, and it's hard to not acknowledge. I like both these fighters because they're both risky fighters. They both like to keep the pace up. They both like to strike, and they both like to get it. So it's going to be a good one. I do want you guys to acknowledge the fact that Hermansson has lethal leg kicks. So as we've been saying in a lot of the latest UFC fights, leg kicks are becoming more and more essential in the winning in MMA. So if Hermansson wants to win this fight, he's going to have to do a lot of leg kicks. He's going to have to do a lot of leg kicks to keep that jab of Strickland away. You don't want to take a beating by Strickland. So I think the leg kicks are going to come into factor. But I will say this. The grappling and the clinch of Sean Strickland is amongst the elite in UFC. He's phenomenal. But on the flip side of that, you guys ever watch Dustin Poirier where he does that dirty boxing? That's Hermansson. Hermansson's a dirty boxer. But if you get him in the clinch, he hits you with the body shots a lot, and they don't seem to affect Strickland. So we got a lot of stuff we got to go on. My number one tip to this fight, the number one thing I'm looking forward to is who is going to be able to find the jab. These are guys that are both fighters that like to keep the pace up. They like to keep their striking distance, and they like to be able to land counter rights. So who's going to be able to keep the jab up? Who's going to be able to counter that jab? Who's going to be able to step it or avoid it? And I'm willing to say it's the better striker. Sean Strickland has better striking percentages than Hermansson does, and I'm willing to bet he's the more better fighter IQ in this fight. The number two thing I have in this is who's going to win the clinch. Because there's two types of clinches. You get the clinch where you go underneath, or you get the clinch where you're on top. Now, if Hermansson can get the lead clinch, he can control the clinch, that dirty boxing is going to piece apart Strickland. It might not knock him out, but it's going to wear his stamina down, and it's going to score him points on the board. But on the flip side, if Strickland gets control of the grappling, of the clinch, he's going to hit him with these little elbows, uppercuts. He's going to piece him apart. Hermansson ain't going to make it out of the clinch. So whoever wins the clinch in this fight is going to be a huge factor. My last thing is this. How can Strickland avoid the leg kicks and the ground game? Because in order to win this fight, Hermansson needs to use the kicks and he needs to do the takedowns. Strickland's a hard guy to get in on. He's a guy that you don't want to fuck up a takedown from because he will catch you. But I think in order for Hermansson to stay alive in this fight, he's going to at least have to try a couple times. So that's what it's going to be. We got the odds here for the fight. We got Sean Strickland, the favorite, at -225. Hermansson's at +188. Not bad odds. To be honest with you, I'm actually kind of surprised that Strickland's that high of a favorite. I understand he has the better last four than Hermansson does, but these guys are both guys that are pretty much identical. So I would have expected it to be a little bit lower on Strickland. So if you're a risky bettor, it's not a bad bet to take Hermansson at +188, to be honest. It's not. I wouldn't do it, but it's a solid bet just in case. We got by knockout. We got Hermansson at +950, and we got Strickland at +220. Now, Hermansson at +950 knockouts, pretty crazy. The reason is because Strickland's a badass motherfucker. He's a guy that, like I said, you don't really knock him out. But like I said, Hermansson has 11 knockouts, all by punches, and 10 first-round finishes. He's not a guy that can't finish people off. He's not a guy that is just going to throw widely and say, hey, I hope we finish it. He's a guy that's strategical, and he knows how to fight. So you want to throw a couple bucks on a Hermansson knockout, especially because we know Strickland is going to throw. That's a pretty good bet. You got odds at +950. That's really high. I think that's actually very disrespectful to the power of Hermansson. Just going to say that there. By submission, we got Hermansson at +550, Strickland at +900. Now, if you're listening to anything I said, I think the key to victory here for Hermansson is that ground game, is that submission. I understand, like I said, though, Strickland has never been submitted in his entire career. There's always time for a first. And I think proving the ability of the submission game from Hermansson is worth a try. So I'm willing to bet he might try that out. By decision, we got Strickland +195 and Hermansson +460. That's probably the safest bet. Like I said, out of his career, Strickland lost by decision twice. But he doesn't have a lot of things. So 2 out of his 3 losses were by points. So if you're going to go against my man Strickland, I would most willingly take by points. Simply because he's really hard to get knocked out because he's get pieced up. You don't submit him. So you got to ground him down. You got to rule him down. And Hermansson's a rounded out guy. So I could see a Hermansson points victory. So if you're willing to bet, if you're going to take Hermansson with plus 188, you're better off taking him by decision, in my opinion. Now, this fight has a lot of context to it because next week we got the middleweight title fight coming up. We got 2 fights on that actual fight card at UFC 271 in Houston, Texas, that are directly related to this fight, which makes this fight that much more, tougher. It's important. It's an important fight. You got Israel Adesanya versus Robert Whittaker 2. Big fight. Depending on who wins that fight, could be a lot of implications for this fight. The fight underneath that is very important too is Derek Brunson versus Connor. Now, that's a very good fight because the winner of that fight is most likely going to get a title shot. But however, let's say Whittaker loses, Izzy wins, Brunson wins, or Cormier wins, whoever cares. But the winner gets hurt. The winner of this fight then, Strickland and Hermansson, directly jumps up into title contention. They might get a title shot right away. And don't get me wrong, I would love to see either of these guys, Sean Strickland and Hermansson, over those 2 guys fight Izzy, in my opinion. Now, my pick. We got Sean Strickland. I don't see him losing this fight. Like I said, he's 19-0 at middleweight. And he just dominates people. I just like the way he fights, his character, his persona. He's a funny-ass dude. I got Sean Strickland winning by points. So I'm taking Sean Strickland plus 195 with the points. Lock that in. But, guys, I'm telling you, tune into this fight on Saturday. It's going to be a hell of a fight. A lot of implications going forward for the UFC. So tune into it. It's going to be a brawl. It's going to be fireworks, the entire fight. So don't miss it out. Enjoy it. Watch it. And we'll catch y'all later.